in name of Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation. And we have an extraordinary expert today. She's a wonderful fighter for LGBTQI community. She has been in different areas exposing the persecution against the community. Herself has been a story of fighting and a struggle and being one of the most notorious and successful LGBTQI activists. And she has been trying to change the legal process in Venezuela to help the LGBTQ and help the transgender community to get the same rights, and basically to respect the human right. We have with us Tamara Adrián. She's a lawyer, a university professor from the University Catholic Andrés Bello, a parliamentarian. She has been persecuted. She has been threatened. She has been fighting in a Congress that has been blocked by the Maduro regime, and the Maduro regime took away that Congress recently by a fraudulent election, and now she's facing concern about probably persecution. She's also a member of the World Movement for Democracy Steering Committee, movement that joins activists from all over the world. She's a member of the Voluntad Popular political party, activist, one of the most notorious and active leader from the opposition movement in Venezuela, and also from the LGBTQI community. Thank you, Tamara. And also Tamara has been evaluating the situation of the community in Venezuela, the persecution, the discrimination. She has been putting together a survey and an investigation and a report, a book about the situation of the LGBTQI community in Venezuela. And we invited her to share with us her stories and share with us the situation in Venezuela and the false propaganda from the Chavez and Maduro regime that they were fighting a progressive agenda that will benefit everyone. And thank you, Tamara. Thank you for being here in the name of Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation. Thank you for accepting the invitation for this webinar. Tamara, how is your fight? First, we want to know your personal fight, all your years fighting in Venezuela, expecting changes with the self-called revolution, and how is the situation before the revolution, after the pseudo-revolution? How is the situation in Venezuela for LGBTQI community?
Thank you very much to the Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation for this opportunity. And thank you, Carlos, for the question you are raising in this moment. I'm gonna start answering your question by remembering one episode that happened to me at a talk I had some 7, 8, no more, probably 10 years ago, the University of New York. And there is an anecdote that I would like to share with you. I was talking about sexual and reproductive rights in Venezuela back in that time. And there was this professor of New York University who started to attack I saying that it was an agent of propaganda, stating that it was all a liar. And the fact that, for instance, that there were there was a crisis starting back in that time about access to contraceptive pills or methods to the crisis arising from early pregnancy, and that's coming from illegal abortion processes, and the attacks against LGBTQ patients. She said, that's all that is a lie. She's just a name of a far right wing party called Voluntad Popular, head by a far right leader called Leopoldo Lopez. And she cited that way. And I told her something like, well, you might be, as a scholar, you might have two options. One, to believe in propaganda, and two, to believe in what the civil society, it's the data that civil society is producing about all these issues. And I will ask you to come and see your own eyes what is happening in my country. Well, that meeting didn't end well, because at the end she started a little bit screaming, and told her that I thought that her position was childish, and that she must review what actually was her research, this process. Well, anyway, that hasn't changed at all. It's still the same ignominious, the same unspeakable silence about sexual and reproductive rights, about LGBTI rights. And at the same time, propaganda has been used very early. All the totalitarian regimes around the world use propaganda. Goebbels established that one lie that it's reproduced 1,000 of times, it becomes truth. And it was the Goebbelian use of propaganda. And I guess that is quite clear that the propaganda in the case of the Chavist and now Madurist regime, it's one of the most important tools they ever had. One, because by using propaganda, they might spread all around the world, all around the globe, the idea that in Venezuela everything is perfect, even huge improvements with regard to day-to-day life of populations, particularly in my case, I'm talking about LGBTI population, but also women. And in fact, the reality, it's completely opposed. 5.3 to 5.4 million people have fled the country according to the UN, and they are considered refugees. Particularly in Colombia, around 2 million Venezuelans are now refugees in Colombia. In other countries, the number is less. Nonetheless, it's a huge number for the population of those countries. We're talking about 400 to 500,000 Venezuelans in Ecuador, or around 1 million Venezuelans in Peru, and so on all around the globe. In just 5 years of this humanitarian crisis we are facing or have been facing in the past 7 years, because something happened. Because people ask me sometimes, why suddenly you're talking about crisis, a humanitarian crisis? Why you are hunger now? Why people are earning $2.50 or $2 per month as a minimum wage? Why this is happening? And the response is the following: for around 10 years, the oil exports got that Venezuela get a income just for this reason of around $100 billion dollars. That's the hugest amount of money ever got into this country. It's more than what have entered between the independence and 2002 to 2003. And in all these years, in 2 centuries, about 2 centuries of Venezuela, and in only 10 years. And besides, Chavez asked for loans to Russia, and in the time in around I was billions, 100 millions of millions of dollars, and in this case, the loans were around more $100 million. That means that suddenly they felt so powerful, and they start to seize, nationalize. Sometimes they pay for, but in general, seize most of the productive farms, most of the company, the producing facilities of any kind, and they practically broke them all in just 5 or 6 years. And as soon as 2012, we started to see that as the prices of oil drop, the internal production was dropping in around 70% in the past, but it was not noticeable because with so huge amount of the government had the money enough to buy and import anything we need, and people didn't feel the lack of products, the lack of food, the lack of everything. But suddenly, when the prices drop, the incapability of importing all the products we need show the reality to people. And in this context, we see what is the situation of the Venezuelan LGBTI population. Nowadays, you see that equal rights have been achieved in Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, and somehow in Bolivia. And you now have in all these countries rules against discrimination. And technically you have a public agency that is in charge of promoting equality and fighting against discrimination, and even punishing the case of discriminations. You have equal marriage in Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and civil equalitarian unions in Chile, and by a court decision of the Supreme Tribunal of Bolivia, also register partnerships in Bolivia. You have the recognition of the identity of trans persons in all these countries, all of them, by administrative request before the civil registry officer, and without the need of a trial or to go before a judge, and no any evidence whatsoever that to be produced except for the will of the person to be named and have a different gender in their documents. Nothing of that is happening in Venezuela. At the same time, you see something. In the case of trans people, the legal identity was recognized until 1998, via judiciary power, via judicial decisions, and that was since 1977. And what happened in 1998, particularly in 1999, and why no single trans person had been granted with the recognition of their identity since 1998 in Venezuela. It means more than 22 years now. it is because they changed the judges. It was the year in which the new constitution promoted by Chavez was approved, and they changed the judges, by judges that were appointed by the Supreme Tribunal Justice that was completely co-opted and controlled by the Chavez party. So they appointed people as judges, which only merit was to be a part of the PSUV party. And many of them were also religious persons, particularly neo-Pentecostal religions that are, in this case, very active in politics in Latin America. And the result was that since 1999, I recognized, and have been denying all the requests on the merits. I mean, not admitting even the demand to be heard. And science also shown in other cases. And that was the case one. That's why I talk about this unspeakable silence. In my own case, I introduced an action before the Supreme Tribunal of Justice for the recognition of my identity back in 14 May 2004. And now, almost 17 years later, this action has not been decided. But it's not the only one. Around over 13 to 15 trans people have requested before the Supreme Tribunal of Justice the recognition of their identity. And that was between 2012 and 13. And since then, none of these cases has been resolved. Venezuela is one of the 70 countries that actually criminalize, say, same-sex relations in a single, and in only one area, in the area of the military. In the military code, procedural code, establish a punishment of 1 to 3 years in prison for what they call those who are members of the military. The fact is that in the past years, many persons have been dismissed of the military if they are found to be gay or lesbians, and they are menaced to be submitted to this trial, and they request them to just request for their withdrawal of the military. Back in 2008, there was a commission for the reform of the national police. They created a national police called the Bolivarian National Police. And I knew the person who was in charge of this commission. I convinced her to introduce a training for the new heads of this police about gender equality and the behavior of the police towards women and LGBTI population. And actually, we were able for this police to enact a ruling concerning this non-discrimination. And I participate back in 2008 in some training for these high officers of the police. But it ceased, it just stopped. I mean, there were only 3 or 4 classes, and that stopped. And actually, this ruling was changed later, and all the rules relating to respect of LGBTI were almost beaten. In practice, for some years, let's say 2000 to 2010 or 2011, the number of people just detained for the fact of being LGBTI decreased. And the cases that are very often cases of extortion, as a matter of fact, the same kind of extortion that happened back in the United States, the case of Stonewall and the police of New York. These people that used to go to the Stonewall bar, by the time they get out of the bar, were detained by the police, and they were submitted to extortion and corruption that surrounded this was the trigger actually of the revolts of Stonewall. And in the case of Venezuela, that happened all the time. If the police surrounded the top by the bars where LGBT people used to attend, and when they get out, and they menace them to put them in, if they their cell phone or some money, or just for the extortion, the kind where minor, they were 18, 19, 20 years old guys or girls. They told them, okay, this is we'll have to call your parents and tell them to go and find you at the police station because you were committing acts against public moral and public standings of that happen again. That is happening again with another ingredient, is the fact that since 2011 the labors of policing have been also transferred to the National Guard, who is part of the army. And National Guard, it's not trained for dealing with people, and it's very often that this kind of extortion occurs when a National Guard stops you in what we call here an Alcaba, which is a area where they are stopping the car and at papers. They see that two guys or women are together in the car. They start to ask for questions. And you know, this is the kind of situation is happening very often. Another thing I was thinking about your is the fact that Venezuela practically the sole country in the region that doesn't have any rules protecting LGBTI students. The primary school, high schools, or universities. Almost every one of the 400 major universities in the region have policies related to discrimination against LGBT students. Venezuela have not any of the universities, public or private. And in the Minister of Education haven't taken any kind of relating the protection of LGBTI, particularly trans students. And the fact is that in average, trans students have 4 years less of education than their peers that are non-trans, coming from the same the same social status or surrounding area. And this shows that there is a problem there. This discrimination. 2 years ago, before the pandemic, and in 2018, then there was a case in Iraq in a private school, right? The 11-year-old girl that in the bus, the school bus, told a 12 years old girl that she liked her and just early kissed her very slightly in the. There was in a tunnel, dark. Here in tunnels normally do not have any illumination because of the crisis, and then that very short round 1 or less tunnel. No, probably 15 seconds, right to pass the tunnel. And then when they arrived to the school, some of the girls in that came in the bus told that to the authorities of the school, and the next day, well, expelled both of them of the school. And I tried to tell them, and it was a case in which we changed a measure to install and the school during the holidays of the court. They got as an award of the court annulling the decision to install their girl in the school.
We're having some problems with Tamara. It looks like the connection with the Venezuela. She has a devoted line for connection. Even with that devoted line, the connection is terrible. Every time that I have a meeting with Venezuela or any a call with Venezuela, is always like something like this. It's almost impossible to have a normal conversation with anyone in Venezuela. Let's wait for Tamara to join us again. And it's a situation, Tamara was telling us hello?
I'm happy, yes. I'm so sorry, but internet, private internet connection, and it doesn't work any. As well, I mean, and it's very, very expensive. And as part of this down process that we are facing, and that put us in the I think in the fourth of. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Where was I caught?
You were caught at the end of the story of the boss and the judicial process behind the perpetrators.
Okay. Then I went. We went to the Minister of Education to ask for a decision in favor of these girls, and against the unspeakable silence about LGBT rights. This is how back of 2 or 3 of the members of the probably that kind of appealing that back in that time, because none of the countries in the region had equal rights. But now, when as I said, at least 85% of the population of the region have equal rights. If you add the population of Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, well, you will get more than 2/3 of the population of the entire Latin America. This is, nobody believes now that in this propaganda. It's not a case that goes in their propaganda all around the world. It was contacted by a trans girl living since 2017 in Argentina. And the problem is that in Argentina, you are to get your the identity card, the Argentinian identity card, in your name and gender, the preferred name and gender, if you are not able to do it in your country. And this girl asked for this recognition of her identity in Argentina. The fact is that the of Venezuela sent to the chancellery in Argentina a letter stating that yes, it was possible to change name in Venezuela because and that is true. I mean, the law actually exists, but it's not applicable. The fact is that back in 2008, they approved a civil registry law, and I participated in the discussions, and I tried to introduce a rule concerning identity for trans in many of the Latin American countries. I mean, you go to the register officer and you ask for the change of name and gender, and they issue a new birth certificate to you. That's it. Basically, no objections, no evidence, other perceiving gender identity that is recognized.
I think we lost you
started again. Discussions by the Chavez, 100% Chavez time. They allow. Are you hearing now? Do you hear? Yes.
We lost you. Yeah, we lost you. It's very hard to hear right now. Tamara was explaining about the ID in Venezuela, and for other countries, it looks like a simple thing. The ID, you have your ID, you have your driver's license, and what is a problem? Oh, well, you don't have the driver's license, you don't have an ID. The problem is also for social programs in Venezuela, for club boxes and other social programs. When a trans person goes to try to have that social program, they deny the social program because of the ID, because it's a different face. What they see in the ID, they see in the ID Julian, and they see Sandra in front of them, and they reject the person's right. They reject to provide service. They reject them to provide a healthcare service. That's a major problem. Not only it's a problem and it's a violation of their rights, but at the same time, it's a terrible system that jeopardizes the LGBTI community, because also deny the rights, but also doesn't allow them to participate in the social programs in a country that's facing a terrible healthcare situation, a terrible food scarcity, and a major crisis. They deny them the rights. They persecute them, according to what Tamara was telling us. The police extortion and rape, and the situation in the prisons is worse. It's terrible for any human being that enter in prison. But if you are LGBTI, if you are trans, and you enter in a prison from Venezuela, it's worse for you. And for the experience in some countries like Venezuela, like Cuba, like Nicaragua, they use rape and sexual crimes against political activists, against women, but it's particular against LGBTI activists and opposition leaders. I had the experience. I had a meeting with a young leader from Nicaragua after the demonstration in Nicaragua, and the police detained him, and the police raped him systematically because he's gay. And he was telling me, crying all the story, in the same situation. goes on in Venezuela, how they specifically persecute LGBTI community, happened in Cuba at the beginning of the revolution in Cuba, the execution of all the gay, lesbian, LGBTI community. Now they change, apparently, but it's same violation of rights. In Nicaragua, it's violation of the rights. And as we can hear from Tamara, the violation not only not providing the legal rights that they have to provide, but also on a series of judicial decisions and a series of problems, additional restrictions in terms of access of service, access of health, access, and discrimination in the judicial system, discrimination in the universities, and the government, it's discriminating directly. It is false propaganda because this regime has been selling themselves as regimes that protect human rights, as regimes that protect LGBTI community, and that is not true. And we can see that a pattern in each one of these countries, in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, how they sell one thing outside and how they implement a different thing inside. Let's see if Tamara, are you back? It is worse when you have this situation and you are a political activist. If you are political activist and gay,
I'm back.
oh, you're back. Okay, yeah, we can hear
me?
you, Tamara. Yes, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was hearing you somehow. I was in and out, and yes, it's completely true. For instance, same schools aren't allowed to get they subsidize food that it's into their family. Trans people are not allowed to get access to subsidized food because they don't have the identity that allows them. And in the case of this girl, I mean, was saying that this law of law, it is possible to get the change of name, not name only, because they were saying that otherwise there would be a law marriage, and then they confound everything, and that was the case. But the fact is that in practice, the civil registry that is headed by the those not allow trans persons to change their name. They instructed the civil registry officers not to process any change of name. And this girl that lived in Argentina, because the national this told me that it was necessary to change the I need proof not allow it to do it in
Yeah, it looks like we lost her again. That's the reality with Venezuela. Even if you try to call a family member, it's always the same. They send you a voice message to communicate, and that's almost impossible to maintain a fluid communication with Venezuela. And a meeting with Venezuela under this terrible regime, communications in Venezuela have been failing for several years, but because of the lack of investment. In our discussion today, and let's round it out. We have been talking about the situation, the lack of the protection, lack of support from the government, and not even that. It's also the not having equal rights. In terms of schools, in terms of food, in terms of access to service, in terms of everything. And it's supposed to be a progressive regime. It's a progressive government that protect everyone and provides rights for everyone. It is not true, and in particular for the LGBTI community.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm trying
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
I'm trying to get back here. Uh, Very difficult. The connectivity is very poor today. It's completely unacceptable, and I am so ashamed of that. But it's not in my possibilities to change what
No,
I
no,
cannot change.
don't worry, Tamara. You have been explaining the situation very well about the situation in Venezuela. I have been complementing that with some information about the lack of rights, and not only that, the inequality and the persecution, and also tell us about the political situation. Being a trans a person fighting for your rights also in Venezuela, but also facing persecution. And other leaders from also, even from your own political party, La Rosa Mantilla, and other leaders that have been in jail, and they have been and also threatening some LGBTI with raping, with different things, and torture in jail, and the situation of the prison system for anyone is terrible in Venezuela, but for the LGBTI community is worse. So how is the situation in Venezuela?
Okay, let's start by this. Recently, one of the NGO deals with the people in prison shows it released a report where they talk about the terrible situation of LGBTI people in jail. There are some all kind of extortion, all kind of torture, etc., including, and that was reported by the High Commission of Human Rights in her first report, the use of guns to penetrate them by the back. The trans population is not segregated. It's in jail with men, and the women are in jail with men. We don't have the report of any trans men that's in jail, but I don't know what they will do with them. But the fact is, for trans women, they are in jail with the men, and they are used by other prisoners as the servitude to serve them in and with regard to Rosmin Maria, he's currently in as he requested for asylum in France because he was detained for several years. He was considered by he was elected with me. The two of us were party of Voluntad Popular. He is no longer part. He was detained for several years, and the international issue a campaign is considered to be using of conscience, and was traveling, and he was say that as soon as he will get into Venezuela, he will put in. And he to stay in and request for political asylum in France. In my case, two things, and probably the first I'm going to relate is not it was not related to directly to discrimination. In January 2019, we were prohibited to get into the parliament, the building, and we tried to get in, and in my case, I was in my breast, and one of the protests I had was broken now to on my own because it was not covered by any kind of insurance. And in the other and the other cases are the same fact. my identity for trans people has been recognized under this regime for 20 some years. And on the opposite, the propaganda, when I travel and I say those things, there is someone who always says, listen, I have the information about the fact that in Venezuela you have all the rights. And I ask this person, where did you get this information? Because I know it, and to that you say I have, I would like to know where they are. So might of them, I might take advantage of those rights. I will not be fighting for equal rights. Rights and tell me where they are. No, listen, you here, you are protected from discrimination. And then I in house. Okay, let's go to the detail. The law states that no one can be discriminated in the announcements published because they're soul, because they are their race, or sexual orientation. And then I tell you to publish a announce saying that that you will not allow for a single person or a parent without being married, or a person of color, of an LGBTI person. You will never get this. You never get this. And basically, it is. I got a message, very strange message, saying that I was in a second device connected. I don't know what. I don't know if it was something. I don't know, weird thing. And this is the kind of discrimination, of course, by menace. Anyone who is involved in politics against the dictatorship is somehow, we know that. And just 4 days ago, another member of the Parliament of Guaidó was jailed, and for the third time, by the way. And he was not really just one of that. In this case, the PAES is an organism of the police that actually has killed 37 persons in just the months of February in extrajudiciary executions, and it has been mentioned in the reports of the High Commissioner of Human Rights several times, and they have requested for this organism to be dissolved. Well, actually, this organism asked for the identity card of the because they stopped the car and they put him in jail, and they revoked the order of excarceration that he had 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, Gilberto Soto. And there are so many other cases. So in fact, you may say that if you are involved into politics, you are threatened because you are into politics. Besides, you are LGBTI person. Of course, it is very difficult to Venezuela. As I say, they use the propaganda very well. And as you mentioned, the same thing in the Mariela Cano and CNSS said, oh, the Black are well protected. Have the right to marry, have the for the record of identity of trans people, don't have protection legation, and they don't have affirmative actions to the country.
We lost Tamara again. She was related her expertise with respect to other countries like Nicaragua, like Cuba, in which also LGBTI population has been under threat, denying their rights, and is a pattern also as of propaganda, but lack of rights at the same time. It is a problem that how they has been violating their rights. Tamara, are you there again? It's and Tamara also has been putting together a report with all the situations in Venezuela, the discrimination. Okay.
am again here trying to actually, if I might condense and condensate the this problems related to discrimination, trends against people. It's sometimes very clear. In other cases, just this kind of regime goes in practice. For instance, against people detained in general political prison or on prisoners. How they are treated in prison, they are treated in detention. There.
Yes. Well, we have been.
Yes.
Yes, good. Yes, thank you, Tamara. It has been very interesting. Just one final words. What is your recommendation in terms of the activists of the LGBTI community here in the U.S. and in the region, how they can support the LGBTI in Venezuela, the LGBTI movement, or how they can help to prevent the discrimination, the persecution, the repression, also how they can help to prevent also what's going on there. That it's terrible for every Venezuelan. 5.5 million Venezuelan live in the country, walking. The walkers going to different countries, a country with 21 years of repression. So your last words, what is your recommendation for the international community with respect to Venezuela?
Yes, that's the case, the member of Azul Afirmativos, NGO based in the state of Zulia. And the support of the UN community, they were offering antiretrovirals for the people in the Zulia, and as well some support for food, because if you are HIV positive and you need, you're undernourished, you have to give them some support in order to overcome this undernourishment. And they were doing that support, I insist, of the European community and the UN. Well, they were put in jail because of those activities. And they were released 1 month later, but not released. They are still on trial because according to the judge and according to the attorney officer, they were charged of using, because what they were, the way they were transferred the money for purchasing foods to these people that they were supporting was via this prepaid, were granting them prepaid debit cards for the people to purchase food. Well, actually, charge the crime of fraudulent incomes, as well as criminal activities, coalition for criminal activities on the trial. And of course, all the NGOs are on the track, but this is the very first time that activists of the LGBTI are actually jailed for what they are.
Well, we lost Tamara again. We have been problems with the communication, and obviously that there has been had a tremendous impact with this conversation, and we hear the pain from Venezuela, and also the last a recommendation from Tamara about supporting the civil society organization that has been under threat in Venezuela. Some of the groups has been also persecuted by the regime just because they support families in need, providing food, providing some medicines, and they have been incriminating them with some charges because they have been using dollars and transferring dollars to Venezuela. It has been a terrible process in Venezuela, from persecuting political leaders to persecuting youth movements, persecuting workers, and also the persecution against the LGBTI community, and the persecution against civil society organizations, human rights groups, and taking them to jail and to prison, or opening charges against them just because they are doing their work. And it's not only political organization, it's also organizations that provide social services, and because just the regime doesn't want for them to connect with the people. And it has been increasing the pressure in Venezuela. So the last word from Tamara Adrián is the need for more action at the international level, more engagement from the UN to prevent this kind of crimes in Venezuela, and also stop the persecution against the civil society. In the name of, we are just the last minute of this session, and I want to thank you for being here, to be so patient because of the problems with the connection, and that's proof that the situation in Venezuela is getting worse by the minute, and needs the solidarity of the international community in terms of putting more pressure against the regime, and more support for the people that are fighting in Venezuela. In the name of Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation, I want to thank Tamara for her contribution, for her work, for her fight, and we hope that the situation will improve in the future, but we will keep supporting the work of several activists, organizations, and the fighters for democracy, human rights, and equal rights and fundamental freedoms in Venezuela. Thank you for being here in the name of VOC, and see you in our next webinar.